To be loved and to be accepted is one of the most human desires there is. This theme of not just finding yourself, but finding your people, your crew, your unit, your family.
Family, 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 family.
All jokes aside, though, this theme comes up over and over again. We see this appear in fiction and nonfiction, movies and books, video games and TV shows. The family of choice. The found family. The family we choose. This theme is something that has become so popular and so desirable that if you spent any time querying a manuscript or looking for a literary agent, you've likely seen this on just about every agent's wish list. This trope is also something that occurs over and over again, sweeping the landscape of entertainment while facing very little critique and criticism. This appears all the time, and it's what people seem to absolutely love. The family of choice, or the found family, is a trope that has existed forever. It's one of the most popular tropes there is, but I don't always hear people talk about why that is. I don't hear people discuss why it is successful and how writers can write it better, or take parts of it to improve their story. This trope is one that I personally love, and once I realized it, I kind of saw it everywhere. It's wholesome, heartwarming, tragic, dramatic, and more importantly, sympathetic. Let's take a look at the found family or the family of choice and see what exactly it is, how we can write it, and what its effective elements are. At its core, this trope is about a group of individuals that are unrelated by blood, who form a deep familial bond. The central idea here is that it is the family that we choose rather than the family we are born into. I think that where we see this trope get played out the most is in genre fiction, like fantasy and even science fiction. But we also see this in many other genres and nearly every age group. I think we can expand this sort of feeling to, or how we define this trope, to even the sort of Band of Brothers type trope. This can be something that people can bond over, whether it is over a shared experience or a unique background, or even through some sort of traumatic event. Let's look a little bit more, though, at why this trope is so popular and how we can emulate it, or at least pull from it for our own writing. Characters are the heart of storytelling, and characters plus conflict equals a story. But amongst those characters and within that conflict, there is relationships. These are things that give thematic weight and makes the reader invested in the plot and setting and care about the world that these characters are within. There's weight that also is added as well as we start to deal with themes and the different dynamics that are happening between our characters. Characters become the conduit that is the emotional resonance that creates a resonating feeling in your story. We care about what is happening because we care about who is on the page. We care about what's happening because of whoever might be on the screen. And found family is such a useful tool because of its ability to build emotional resonance with those characters. They become relatable and they become a cast where we want the best for nearly every person on the screen. All of us at some point in time have had either family, friends, or a relationship that we can tap into and be applied to our story. There's a feeling of belonging. We are social creatures, after all, where we want to be accepted by another group, and we want to see our characters that we care about be accepted amongst their group. And that's a major part of this storytelling element. The exploration and impact of found family can be seen throughout the history of storytelling, through every medium that we can think of, whether it is a film or a play or a book or a video game. Found family is present throughout all of them. We can look at the wild success of Stranger Things, the TV show about a bunch of high school kids that are coming together in a wild science fiction retro story. Or we can look at Guardians of the Galaxy and even the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. In a way, all of those are just retellings of found family. Retellings of these extraordinary heroes and characters coming together in a sort of familial bond. The relationships that play out between them sometimes cause schisms or further bonding, but at the end of the day, it is this sort of found family and those relationships that truly draw us in as viewers. We see themes played out in both of these scenarios, like friendships, belonging, and even unity in some sort of way. It's these sorts of themes that get explored, the themes that happen between another person or amongst a group of friends and family, that I think is at the heart of why this trope resonates with so many people. It sort of goes on just identifying with a single character, but more so identifying with a group of characters, or that one character and the role that they play within the rest of the characters. It's a shared experience that results in a positive, negative, or neutral change. What we can do is we can try to reflect on our own relationships, the good ones, the bad ones, the ones that we've had forever, and try and see how we might distill those down to a clear essence and then implement that amongst our own cast. If you're getting value out of today's video, please consider liking and even subscribing, as it's a good way to help grow the channel, but also as a good way for me to know what topics are resonating with you and what topics you might want to hear more of in the future. But redemption and healing are also common themes. This often is seen through the multiple POV or through multiple points of view characters' arcs. A lot of times we find that we heal more, or that we find more success in our journey of healing or redemption amongst a found family, as opposed to the family that we are born into. There are plenty of examples we can draw from where maybe it's not the main theme of the story, but it could be sub-themes of redemption and even healing. This doesn't necessarily have to reflect the audience's desire to find redemption or heal themselves, but more so in seeing a fictional character go through this process. The emotional resonance that we feel whenever we see two characters fighting on screen that we desperately want to be together, or that we desperately want to make things right. That sort of feeling, that sort of desire and investment that we have is something we should strive for when we are writing this trope. Healing and redemption also are inherently tied to character arcs. We see a character do something bad or be in some kind of bad place, but by the end of the story, they have changed or have tried to change for the better, for something neutral, or for something worse. We can look at a TV show like The Bear. In this case, many of the characters are going through some sort of healing or redeeming process. Carmen, our main protagonist, is dealing with the death of his brother and this feeling or desire to mend the schism that's ruptured throughout his family. This is done so by saving or restoring the restaurant left to him. Seeing this process play out is deeply painful because we have become invested in the cycle of redemption and healing, mostly because of how it is influencing the other people around Carmen. This new family, this new found family, despite always falling back on a family that is broken and probably not good for him, he continues to try to fix it, ignoring the ruptures that he's causing with his new relationships. And we can also look at The Last of Us, which is a series and a game that I bring up a lot. But I think that it showcases some perfect examples in especially this regard. In The Last of Us, we see this process of redemption and healing manifest itself between Ellie and Joel. Mostly this is being done through Joel's character arc. He has existed in this post-apocalyptic version of America as a broken human doing terrible, terrible things, though most brought on by the death of his daughter. The process of his healing is found in a new familial bond between him and Ellie. The trope of being a surrogate parent or a surrogate child, I think, falls under the category of found family. Joel still does terrible things, but a part of him has changed because of his new identity as this sort of stand-in father for Ellie. This path of redemption is only done because of the bond that is being established between these two characters that are not blood related. This new family is bringing about change to both these characters. And that's the main thing here. Redemption and healing force a character, especially when we are talking in the context of a found family, to go through some sort of change or character arc. This can happen to minor characters, but also to major ones as well. But these changes can happen independent of a found family. And actually, I think adding the aspect of a found family amplifies these themes and gives them more weight. We have more buy-in. We want Carmen to heal, but more importantly, we want him to heal in the context of the rest of his staff. And in the context of The Last of Us, we want Joel to save Ellie. We want him to continue this relationship between them. But in the process, he does something worse than he's ever done before. And this is something that I think is a little bit underappreciated when it comes to writing found family. And that's the inclusive nature and the ability to broaden our cast. Now, this allows us to not just have a bigger cast, but it allows us to have a more diverse cast and to show some of the interpersonal conflict and resolution amongst characters with different backgrounds or places of origin. It also gives us as writers the ability and the freedom to explore many different perspectives, backgrounds, cultures, and identities, and see how those might interact with or play out in a cast of people who are not normally their peers. This can be something like upperclassmen in a high school setting having to work with underclassmen. Or this can be people from different countries coming together, unifying under some other type of symbol or bond that extends beyond just their country of origin. Often there are many different characters with different backgrounds, genders, identities, shapes, and sizes. This can work to our benefit of the creator, as there are more opportunities for the audience to also see a part of themselves amongst your cast. Now, we want to avoid tokenism and avoid trying to make a cast of diverse individuals with all sorts of different backgrounds just for the sake of creating a broad cast with the hopes of capturing a broad audience. I think this goes a little bit more beyond that, and there's a level of depth that we can use to explore some very interesting concepts and dynamics. Generally, bigger casts offer the opportunity to diversify your characters, broadening the perspective and creating a feeling of inclusivity, not just for those characters, but also for the audience at large. I think for a long time, we also see the found family be the conduit or even the catalyst to enact change in entire genres or overused and overplayed story elements. And one that I think is a bit more niche, but when we zoom out a little bit, it becomes it makes a lot more sense. And that's this overcoming of isolation or loneliness. At its core, we may not want what's best for a character because they are lonely or isolated, and we may also not necessarily have that feeling ourselves. But at the end of a story, when our main character, or maybe the hero amongst our cast, is sitting around a table or amongst this newfound family that they have, there's a rewarding and warm feeling that we often have. This can then be coupled with the dread of them breaking or ruining that newfound family. This can lead into other and interesting themes that might be explored down the line, but at the end of the day, this sort of creates a new level of tension. I don't think we ever want a character, or we ever root for a character to wind up alone. Most times we end up thinking to ourselves that we hope that these characters work it out, or that we hope that they stay together. It may not be the main character or the hero that we are rooting for to stay together, but it might be for the sake of the other character, or them ruining that relationship with a side character. Part of the human experience is companionship and winding up with somebody or some buddies, if that can be plural. But there's this feeling of making friends and being accepted. I think this is why a lot of sitcoms like Friends and How I Met Your Mother, where a lot of the times these central concepts and ideas are centered around these characters maintaining these relationships. Or we can even look at Community.
I guess we feel like we're sort of all a family, and Jeff and I are like your Greendale parents.
You're not my mom, Britta. She would never wear boots that go up that high.
Where this study group eventually becomes a family of choice. No longer because of the need to study for school, but to be part of a group. So many of these characters have dysfunctional lives outside of the study group that this group makes everyone feel welcomed, offering a sense of belonging. This is also something that we a lot of times see when it comes to misfits and when it comes to a group of misfits coming together. I definitely saw this as aspects in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn. We want to see these characters who are part of the crew, despite their differences, work things out and reach their goals and get along, especially for Vin. We've seen how many times she has been betrayed and how many times she's been abandoned or used. And there is this added level of tension around her finding a new family within this crew of misfits. And that sort of leads into that impact on the different character dynamics that we can play with, or that we love to see and read about. Seeing characters and their relationships evolve over time, either coming together or the fear of them drifting apart, is something that adds to that experience as a audience member. Playing with character dynamics can be a very engaging way to make a story, plot, or even the characters more interesting. We can think of all the different backgrounds, morals, ideas, ideals that each character has and put them in a group where we might see those ideas and morals be challenged. Sometimes there are others in the group who agree, disagree, change their opinion, harden their opinion, argue, fight, debate, compromise. Everything that can happen between two characters or a group of characters is what makes the family of choice so interesting. Whether we agree with any one character's position or belief, we care about the structural integrity of the group. Or even we care about the structural integrity of the different relationships within the group, or even the individuals themselves. The other thing that this can do is bring out and accentuate certain character traits. We can see things that we might not have noticed or had only ever really seen from one perspective clash or complement another character. In the Murderbot Diaries, we see a lot of the times the social anxiety of Murderbot come out when they are faced to interact with others. But when they begin to build a bond with art, we want them to overcome those character flaws. We want them to be less socially awkward, and we want them to befriend this sentient transport ship. Also, this is a massive theme when it comes to different RPG type games. We see this play out when we are trying to figure out who we want in our party and to traverse a world with. We oftentimes don't necessarily choose the character with the best stats, but maybe the one that is the most entertaining with their dialogue, or the one that might give us the most insight in the world that we are experiencing. These different character dynamics are something that give a lot of freedom and can be a lot of fun to play around with when it comes to writing sort of this new family of people who found each other. This is something that I think is a fun thing to explore as a writer, but also keeps things fresh and interesting as a reader or an audience member. And this has sort of been mentioned or at least hinted at throughout some of these other points, but the creativity that you have in the storytelling capability is something that I think is underappreciated when it comes to the found family trope. There are a lot of unique character arcs and story arcs that we can explore when we start to expand our cast, or when we start to have these characters in this sort of found family scenario. The different character intersections or the different ways that these characters might help or hinder each other are what we can sort of use to explore this trope further. I think we can all think of a unique story or a unique element to a story that was enhanced because of the cast that it had. We can use sitcoms once again to look at the humor that comes when certain characters are in a room, or when certain characters or when specific characters are removed from it. This is sort of the most vague one, but it does sort of emulate the creative freedom and emphasize the point that in creating a sort of found family, we have the opportunity to write a myriad of different stories. And that might be why this one is so popular. It opens the door for so many other stories that we might not have thought to have read or watched because of the characters and the character dynamic amongst a group of chosen family members. We can take this story concept and put it in any setting, any genre, for any age group, and it will still resonate. It will still feel fresh and unique, impactful, and immersive. But I think one of the biggest things that explains why the found family trope is so popular and often why it leads to so much success is because of the challenges and the conflict within found families. This is where that added depth and tension comes from. We never quite can feel like we are on sturdy ground if we are afraid that at any point a relationship between two characters, despite how successful they might be in the main plot, might separate. This is really the catalyst that happens for much of the main conflict for the rest of Red Rising, when Darrow has to murder Cassius's brother. It is this friendship that turns to enemies that really first began at a new found family scenario. And it's not always just about the tension and the conflict that we can create amongst these found families. Sometimes it's too about the growth that they go through because of that conflict. Sometimes it's also about coming together and standing up against something much bigger than each individual, or coming together to form something greater than the sum of its parts. But at the end of the day, this element of storytelling is popular for a reason, and it does its job in creating tension and creating a interesting place to tell a story. But I'm curious what you think. Have you noticed that this storytelling element or trope is also popular? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know what you're wrestling with. I'm always curious to hear some of the things that you're working on or struggling with. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.